Now, moving on to the second insight for today, continuing this conversation of what people think of churches and pastors in DFW, we're going to talk now about the quote unquote brand of the church. So if we look at this chart right here, we see on the left, there are positive views. And I do want to draw our attention to that first item. So the top perception of the local church in DFW is that it offers hope to people. 81% of the people in your area feel that way. I think that's wonderful. That's cause to celebrate, right? That hope is still something that people see when they look at the church. The second top item there is that the church cares about people like me. And the third item is that the church is generous. And the majority of people, the vast majority of people in your city feel that way. So yes, cause to celebrate for sure. I do want to draw our attention though to the right side of this chart, the negative views, especially that first item. We see that 42% of people in DFW say that the church is known for the things they are against. I would say 42%. So it's roughly 4 in 10 people. So if you imagine walking down the street, 4 in 10 people that you pass feel this way. And so this is definitely cause to pause and reflect and maybe think about how we can combat this negative perception. Also judgmental, 34% feel that way. Irrelevant to me, 28%. One more thing I want to draw your attention to is that hypocritical item. You see that, interestingly, people in DFW are significantly less likely than national norms to feel like the church is hypocritical. So that's a pretty interesting, unique thing that we're seeing in your area. So perhaps it's time to start paying more attention to other negative perceptions rather than that hypocritical item. So just something for us to consider as we lead our people.
Yeah, and as you're, keep that slide up there for just a second, if you don't mind, and look at the fact that the one area, lots of places where the positive perceptions are higher, but the one area that's higher in negative perceptions is judgmental. Again, another indicator that you've got this highly Christianized context where people, they try to follow the party line. They try to make themselves look maybe better than they need to. Okay, so let's look at other negative perceptions here, particularly among young people. And this second finding I'm presenting is really related to sort of generational perceptions of churches and pastors. I worked on a book years ago called Unchristian: Negative Perceptions of Young Non-Christians. And we're actually showing you just all millennials, all Gen Xers, all boomers. If we were to sort of double click and look at non-Christian millennials, the negative perceptions would be even higher. But you'll look at sort of irrelevant to me, known for the things they're against. That was a very high perception, again, higher among young people. Look at this really fascinating finding. 41% of millennials in the Dallas-Fort Worth area say that local churches are detached from the real issues my community is facing. That's only 16% of boomers in the community. Judgmental, another indicator that we just talked about. And then related to perceptions of local pastors, you can see specifically some spikes with Christian pastors are out of touch with the needs of my community. Or down at the very bottom, Christian pastors are only focused on growing their own churches and not on community transformation. This is one of the most significant generational patterns. So even among millennials, and we said earlier, millennials in DFW have overall pretty positive perceptions of the church, higher than many other churches we're tracking, which can lead you to this false sense of security. Hey, we know how we're working with millennials. There's probably more millennials attending church in DFW as a percentage than would be in true of other communities. But there's these cracks, I think, in the perceptions of millennials about authenticity, about judgmentalism, about being connected to real issues, about, you can see this idea that maybe pastors are really just focused on sort of building their own sort of kingdoms. And so I think that we've got to take some real good look at how we're building up sort of antibodies to the church among young people within the DFW area.
Such a great insight. Thank you, David. Now we're going to look at the other side of the coin, though, and look at the positive perceptions of local pastors. Because the truth is, what we're seeing in the data is that it's not all bad news, so to speak, right? There definitely are some positive perceptions as well. And you see in this text over to the left, the perceptions of pastors in DFW show a Christianized halo effect. So we see that overall, people in your area have a more positive perception of local churches and local pastors than the rest of the nation. So that's definitely unique to your area. We've seen a lot of cities be right on par with national norms, but you definitely do have more positive opinions than in other cities. So that's something to take note of. But I do want to draw our attention to the right side of the screen there, where we see a comparison of churched and unchurched in DFW. And we do see a gap there between the churched perceptions and the unchurched perceptions. And that's to be expected, right? We would hope that people who are churchgoers are more inclined to have positive perceptions of the local church, right? So that's to be expected. But I do want to draw our attention to those dark red triangles, the unchurched triangles. And I want us to see that 64%, so that's the majority of unchurched adults in DFW, say that Christian pastors in my community have been strong leaders during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the majority of unchurched adults. Furthermore, 60% say Christian pastors in my community have been strong leaders when it comes to racial justice. The perceptions of the local church that are held by those outside of the church are positive. They definitely see that you guys have been leading well, even during the past year. So that's something to celebrate. Maybe that's surprising to you. Maybe that is a spotlight, a scale, or a shovel for you as we think about what people think of churches and pastors.